the three types of life that the philosopher Diogenes revealed to Alexander the Great. Diogenes, doing his best, gave a speech calmly and in a high style. Quote, "Many, son of Philip, are all kinds of calamities and disasters for the wretched people, so many that it is almost impossible even to mention them. Because really, as the poet says, there is no word that is so terrible to utter, neither passion nor calamity sent by God, where human nature cannot lift its weight. As there are the most prevalent, so to speak, types of life to which most people belong, but Zeus, not after careful thought and control, but driven by a hoarse impulse and luck, we must accept that so many are the demons that are followed and worshipped by the great and ignorant mass of people, some the one and others the other demon, just as the wretched and filthy bunch follows a wretched and manic demon. Of these types of life that I have mentioned, one is flirtatious and greedy in relation to physical pleasures, the other greedy, and the third more special and much more irregular. I mean the one who loves honor and glory presents more clearly dishonor, disorder, and madness. So let us imitate the skillful creators of art. They, in short, bear the stamp of their inspiration and art in everything, representing not only the divine natures through human forms, but also everything else. Sometimes they paint rivers giving them a masculine shape, and sometimes fountains giving them a feminine shape, and islands and states and almost everything else, something that Homer dared to do by presenting Scamander as speaking through his turbines, give shapes and symbols appropriate to their nature, such as, for example, presenting rivers as men lying, mostly naked, with long beards and wreaths of secrets and reeds on their heads. So let us also show that we are no worse or more clumsy in reason than those in their own arts in terms of shaping and depicting the characteristics of the triple demon of those three lives, showing a tendency opposite and inverse of the ability and prophetic power of those so-called physiognomists. That is, they recognize and represent the character of a person by form and appearance, while we propose to design, based on character and actions, a type and form that corresponds to them, that is, if we can touch the medium and the lower type. In order to expose the irrationality inherent in human lives, it is not bad to reprehensible to see us imitating poets, artists, and if necessary, purgatory priests, and to try to present illustrations and examples of all origins in the hope that we will somehow be able to prevent some form from evil, deception, and evil desires and lead them to virtue, friendship, and the desire for a better life, or we will even follow what some of those who engage in initiations and purifications do, undertaking to appease the wrath of Hecate and to free someone from evil. They expose and explain to him before the purification process many and varied visions which, as they say, he sends, or the goddess, when she is angry. So that greedy demon has a passion for gold, silver, real estate, herds, houses, and all kinds of property. Would not a good artist then depict him gloomy and with a dark face, dressed in miserable clothes? It would not make him lifeless and filthy, one who feels no love for his children or his parents, or for his homeland, or as one who recognizes no kinship other than that of money, and who cares for the gods for nothing except for those who bring him many and great treasures, or who cause the death of some of his own and some relatives, so that he can then inherit them, and he considers the holidays anyway a loss and unnecessary expenses, meaning the holy days, the feasts. So this he pursues, and this he seeks from all sides, without having any doubts as to whether the acquisition of money will be done by shameful or unjust means, while the only thing that holds him back are the dangers which he sees waiting on the road, and that out of cowardice, because his soul is like a useless dog, the soul that grabs other things when it calculates how it will go unnoticed and looks at others without bothering them because there are some guards. Let's say he's a man of insignificant appearance, servile, sleepless, who never smiles, who constantly fights and quarrels with someone, a spit trader, brazen and unfortunate in terms of cut and character, dressed in a colored coat, in actually a cheap bathe of one of his ladies. This demon is filthy, petty, he causes harm to his friends and companions, but more to his slaves and servants, and he shames them in 1,000 ways, whether as an ordinary individual he has them against him or as a king. Or is it not obvious to many of those who call them kings that they are merchants and customs officers and pimps? Others for Dromanas and Saramvos, because they are merchants in Athens. We say that they have rightly been described as a merchant, but Darius the Elder, who had shops in Babylon and Susa, and where the Persians still call him a merchant, rightly has not received his designation. Also, something has happened to this demon that other demons do not have. While sometimes it dominates the soul, sometimes it gives the impression that it submits to it because wealth is a servant and willing healer of every desire and pursuit. But I now refer to the demon who gives direction and dominates the mind of the unfortunate man. That's all. The second man, and the demon of this man who glorifies the orgies of pleasure and admires the honors, this goddess and true female deity, has many forms and many colors, and is insatiable in everything that has to do with smells, tastes, and even, I dare to say, that it has to do with everything that pleases the eye, and everything that brings some pleasure to the ear, everything that is soft and pleasant to the touch, such as hot baths every day or rather twice a day, fragranced mirrors, not these where they get tired, and apart from that, the soft long dresses and appropriate lying down or careful offer of services for all the appetites and needs. He's passionate about all this, but mainly, and with greater incontinence, the spit and insane madness of carnal pleasure of meeting men or women. For now, let's say that we count as one the demon that has been afflicted by all these diseases and passions of the soul, so that we do not gather a bunch of adulterous demons, gourmets, drunks, and a lot of other such, but let us consider that it is just for a demon, one who is unclean and enslaved to pleasure. If there is any source from which a great deal of money is constantly flowing in, from a king or from a large private estate, this demon rolls in great and unbridled contempt to his old age. Otherwise, after spending his fortunes very quickly, he becomes incapable, and an unscrupulous bastard, depriving and insatiable, completely unable to fulfill his desires. And yet, but here again, there is a double offer, because a sick and timid demon of this kind easily leads to feminine passions and other indecencies that lead to loss and shame, or imprisonment, or the payment of a large sum of money. This demon does not entice to commit such errors. However, there is also the most aggressive and brazen demon that forces its victims to overcome every human and divine dream. And the weak and timid demon, as soon as he suffers this shame, admits that what he does not suit a man at all, and leaves the social and political activities to those who have lived with more decency. So does a masculine and serious look fit such a demon, or a flabby and awkward look? So let's wear the clothes that suit him, and not this masculine and imposing one that he often puts on himself while playing theater. Let's say then that Zeus is going soft, with his snout smelling of myrrh and wine, wrapped in a crooked costume, laughing non-stop like a drunkard who participates every day in an infamous pompous parade of revelers. Several garlands were united on the head and neck, leaning, dancing, and singing a feminine and inappropriate song. Let's say that he is led by shameless and filthy women who gossip about him from there and there without him expelling or rejecting them, but ready to follow them willingly. And they should hurry forward in a thunder of cymbals and suraavlis accompanying this madman, and he should shout among them with a voice more piercing and more passionate than the voice of women, whimsical and flabby, ignorant of what fresh air and toil means, with his neck turned to the sides, casting with his wet eyes lustful glances, and always having in his mind on the body without paying attention to the soul and what it imposes. If a sculptor or painter were forced to depict him, it would not make him look like anyone other than a king of Syria, who spends his time inland with eunuchs and cronies without ever having seen a war or meeting. Let's say that fraud is ahead of him, beautiful and deceptive, adorned with pornographic jewelry, smiling and full of promises of beautiful things. How quickly it will lead him to happiness. We were able to push him without him realizing it on the cliff, in the mud and stench, to leave him then to roll there with his garlands and croquette costume. Worshipping such a tyrant and having such passions spend their time as many souls, cowards and weak in the face of hard work, enslaved to pleasures, full of love for pleasures in the body, live a life in shame and humiliation, not because they chose it the same, because they pushed them there on the cliff, in the mud and the stench, to let them roll there with his garlands and croquet costume. Worshipping such a tyrant and having such passion spent in their time as souls, coward and weak, in the face of hard work, enslaved to pleasures, full of love and pleasure for the body, living a life in shame and humiliation. And now after this demon, reason, as if in a fight, hurries to introduce us to the third demon, like the preacher of the dance, the ambitious. He is not very willing to throw himself into the fight now. Only by nature he loves the competition around anything and claims to be first. This time, however, nothing related to his glory or honor or his very bad reputation is judged, where he deserves it. Let's see how we portray the form and appearance of the ambitious demon. Or is it obvious that he will be depicted winged and airy, as befits his character and desires, flying along with the winds, as the artist captured and painted the sons of the north, to run light and meteoric, together with the auras of the Father there, and of course they showed, whenever they wanted, their strength. However, for a time they sailed with other heroes on the Argo. He's talking about the ship of the Argonauts, performing the work of the ship and the other works like any other. But the demon that protects ambitious people never touches the earth or anything else, anything low. It is high, meteoric, and when the sky is clear and there is peace or a beautiful breeze, it is even happier and ascends to heaven itself. However, he often hides in a dark cloud when it happens that he does not have a good name and is criticized by many people, those whom he serves and honors and has made them bosses, on whom his own happiness depends. But the demon that protects ambitious people never touches the earth or anything low. As far as safety is concerned, this demon does not look like eagles or cranes or anything other flying creature in nature, but one could compare him to the violent and unnatural daring of Icarus, who tried to apply the mechanical trick with mastery of Daedalus. So, wanting to reach higher than the stars, seduced by his youth and arrogance, he was safe for a while, but as soon as the connections began to loosen and the candle dripped, the feathers were put together with wax, he gave his name from then on in the sea, where he fell and disappeared. So that demon of ambition, because he has confidence in weak and insignificant wings, I mean the honors and the accidental plagues of many people, which are done so by chance, wanders from one place to another without security and without stability, and drags with him the man who admires him and is his slave, the one who appears in the eyes of many great and fortunate, and immediately again appears miserable and unfortunate, not only to others but also to himself. But if one does not want to imagine him and create him winged, let him portray him similar to the horrible and violent movement of Ixion, who is forced to move and turn in a circle on a wheel. For it's not really incongruous, nor is it far removed from the adherent and witty smiles, or the similitude of the wheel with glory. The wheel of the potters forces the materials to take their shape on it, and who would not feel pity for such a person, for his character and the way he lives, a man who turns and spins, a comrade of the people and the mob in public hearings and literary demonstrations, or in his so-called friendships with the kings or the tyrant, and his treatments on them. And of course, I don't mean anyone who, having understood his own affairs in the best way, then tries to with conviction and goodwill and with sense of justice to settle and direct for the better a large number of people, a comrade of the people in the mob in public gatherings. Let us end with this demon, so that we do not now reach an endless multitude of words, costumes, forms, and consequences. We would characterize his ethos in 2 words: vindictive, foolish, hollow, dominated by arrogance, jealousy, and all the similar terrible and wild passions. Because all these antisocial, savage, and terrible feelings necessarily accompany the ambitious type of soul, and it's natural for this type to constantly change perceptions and to be unstable, since he is enslaved and obsessed with something so unbalanced, and has transitions from joy in sorrow more frequent and more lasting than they say how hunters have. That is, they say that in hunters this thing happens very often, constantly, as they see the prey and immediately lose it again. So with the ambitious, when they happen to be appreciated and praised, or the soul of such a man swells and sprouts and takes on admirable size, like the sacred olive sprout in Athens, where, as they say, sprouts and grows in one day, quickly again, or the soul of the ambitious man shrinks and goes out with the first rebuke or the first malignancy. And this demon is followed by a deception, more plausible than all the others, not like those of the greedy, or the greedy who could not promise in words anything fancy, nor did they lead their victims to polite and glorious things, but simply whispered to them and presented them with the name of the goods, another demon charming and deceiving her victim. I will try thus to refer here again for the second time to the same myth of Ixion. They say then that in his desire to unite in an unhappy marriage with Hera, Ixionus had intercourse with the dark and raging cloud from which useless and monstrous children were born, or a generation of centaurs, strange and indefinable, and likewise, after experiencing the disappointment in his love for good reputation, he then had relations out of a desire for glory, really with a cloud, without realizing it, instead of rejoicing in the divine and honest love encounter. From such mixes or marriages, nothing useful or beneficial can be provoked, except by strange and horse creatures, similar to the centaurs, that is, the political actions of some demagogues and the writings of the sophists, because both the sophists and the demagogues are just mercenary leaders. But in saying this, I distinguish generals and teachers and politicians from those of whom I have just spoken, all of whom deserve to be given over to the demon of ambition and to belong to his own faction and company. I have now given a description of those who are under the influence of each of the demons I have named. It often happens that 2 demons, or even all of them, have the same person in power, giving him conflicting orders and threatening, if he does not obey, that they will impose great punishments on him. The demon of pleasure commands him to spend for the pleasures and not to regret neither gold or silver, nor any other acquisition of it, while the greedy and stingy demon does not allow it, but holds him and threatens him if he obeys him. He will destroy him from hunger, thirst, and all kinds of poverty and misery. Simultaneously, the demon of ambition advises him and encourages him to sacrifice his possessions for the sake of honor, but the other demon resists and fights him, and indeed he who loves pleasure and he who loves glory can never match or say the same thing, because one despises glory, considers it nonsense, and often recites the verses of Sarandapalos, "These are mine, that I ate, the curses I knew, that I rejoiced in love." And this demon constantly brings death before his eyes, especially as a warning that he will not be able to have a share in any pleasure. So having nothing to do and where to turn and hide, he often escapes into the darkness and tries to please the other demon and secretly serve him. But the other exposes him and exposes him. Thus his soul, torn and divided, always at war and in constant dimension with itself, will inevitably lead to all kinds of misery, because just as diseases are intertwined and seem to oppose each other or make medicine difficult and impossible, so do I think. But forward, after tasting the pure honey, the pure harmony, the one that is better than the previous one, let us praise the good and wise demon and God, which is blessed Muses, which the blessed muses decided to give us, to those of us who have tasted proper education and wisdom. And this is all about the kingdom, Theon Chrysostomos, reasons 4. Excerpt from the book The Ancient Cynics, excerpts and testimonies, N.M. Skouteropoulos, and this is from a Greek article I've translated for you. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.